Welcome to the February 3rd, 2014 Troy City Council meeting. We are pleased this evening to have Mayor Pro Tem Henderson lead us in the invocation. So if you would please stand and then remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for another wonderful day that we've had today. We thank you for the safety as we have extreme temperatures and weather that we have to navigate through. We thank you for this assembly of individuals to serve the city. We pray that you'll just be with us today as we look over the agenda, help us to make appropriate decisions in your name. Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Bittner.
Mayor Slater?
Here.
Councilmember Campbell?
Here.
Councilmember Fleming?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson?
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Here.
Councilmember Pennington?
Here.
Councilmember Teets?
Here. All present. Our first order of business is certificates of recognition and special presentations. C1, the first presentation will be for an honor that has returned to the City of Troy, the Safest City presentation, introduced by City Manager Brian Kishnick. Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Usually I don't insert any comments and have the police chief come up and give this presentation, but I just wanted to, on the first two items, the Safest City and the Economic Development Activity Update, it's really what this is meant to do is to highlight the success that the people have had, not just at the police department, not just the economic development, but the entire city team, which includes the City Council, staff and residents in this community. And we want to share some of those successes with you tonight. And the first one is the Safest City. The second is the economic development that's happening. So that's why that was on there.
Thank you. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mr. Kishnick did ask me to do a brief presentation, kind of give an overview of where we're at with the Safest City. For your reference, we passed out some the information you're going to see displayed tonight. We're very proud to announce once again that we are the safest city in the state of Michigan. That's quite an achievement. It's very significant not only for the police department, but for the whole City of Troy community. It reinforces that high quality of life that the City of Troy offers. This isn't just a police department award. It's a tribute to the residents, the business community, our excellent school system, groups like the Troy Community Coalition, the Troy Boys and Girls Club, Troy Youth Assistance, of course, city management, and finally the City Council. If the City Council didn't give the funding that we needed, we couldn't have a police department and all the things that we do, so we all appreciate it. So as I stated, we're the safest city in the state of Michigan. This according to CQ Press. CQ Press says their data based upon what used to be the FBI big crimes, the major crimes. So they were looking at the safest city aspect of it. So they were looking at homicide, robbery, rape, burglary, aggravated assault. The crimes that tend to be crimes against person are very significant. They don't include arson and larcenies in their ranking. There are other ones out there that include arson and larcenies. The larcenies tend to be, in Troy we have a lot of retail, so the larcenies don't really affect the feeling of safety or safe feeling that people have in the community, because larcenies occur within a retail establishment. They don't affect quality of life. As you can see with the data that we have there, we are 35th overall in the United States, and we put in the other cities that are comparable to us in that top 100 ranking. So you can see Farmington Hills, Sterling Heights, Livonia, and Ann Arbor also made the top 100, which you can see where we are overall with them. We've been the safest city in Michigan overall for 12 of the last 17 ranking periods, and we've consistently ranked in the top 25 safest cities in the United States with a population over 75,000. I want to briefly provide some of the data without boring you too much with this information, but you can see our annual totals for arrests continue to go up. And when you consider our staffing is going down, that's quite an achievement. Our drunk driving arrests continue to go up. We're doing a really good job keeping the streets safe. For Group A crimes, which are the big crimes that I mentioned that are used for this ranking, you can see compared to last year, our Group A crimes are going down. So we had 181 fewer Group A crimes, which is going in the right direction. And at the same time, we had an increase in arrests in those areas. So that should show you that the police officers are going out there and focusing their attention on the important crimes. What we've tried to do, and we've been very fortunate with, is we've gotten a lot of volunteers to come in and help with the police department, and the overall goal in using volunteers and part-timers is to free up police officers to be on the road. The message was loud and clear to the police department that we had to get boots on the ground. We wanted police officers out doing what only police officers can do, which is make arrests and be out there making an impact on crime. So we've gone as far as we can to make police officers very efficient, and the officers have responded very well by having that additional time, and they've stayed very busy. You could see that our police reports taken by desk attendants have gone up, and then our online reporting, so that's using technology to help us, has gone up also. So what that's doing is it's freeing police officers from writing police reports and being on the road. What I want to do here is illustrate the fact that it takes people to do this job, not only the police officers and the employees of the police department, but some of the volunteers. So you can see our Citizens Police Academy, which many of you are aware of. I believe one of you is going to start attending that pretty soon in our next group. We have a picture of our school resource officer, which shows our partnership with the Troy School District and how well that's going. There's a illustrating picture of using a police lobby volunteer. What that does is it enhances our service. When people come in, we make sure that they're in the right place, they have the data they need to do a report, we help them make police reports. We do some of the events in the community, like Shop with a Cop. We have all our volunteers that come to help us with that, as well as police employees in uniform and the non-uniform personnel. The Citizens on Patrol, we keep track of the time the citizens on patrol are out there patrolling, and that's basically the equivalent of one full-time police officer, that citizens are volunteering their time, their vehicles, and all their stuff to be out there working for us and being our eyes and ears. So it's a very good program, which is no cost to us. The Troy PD VFW Food and Gift Drive, see a couple guys right here that went to deliver food to some needy people in Troy. I couldn't resist that opportunity to show Mr. Kishnick. I know you don't often see him with a coffee cup in his hand, but he did have one at that time. We've had very bad weather. You can see here is several police officers and some firefighters at the scene of an accident. We're out there 24/7, 365 days a year, no matter what the weather conditions are like. So through this frigid temperature, police officers have been out there. I had occasion to be in late one night, and they were out tracking somebody who was stealing from cars. We had the dog out there. It was brutally cold. The snow was very deep, and they were tracking through the backyards, and they were able to apprehend the man who had been breaking into cars. So it was a real good job by 4 of our police officers. It continues to, I'm very impressed with the group of officers that we've been hiring and the officers that stayed with us through thick and thin here, and they've also been doing a really good job. We've been working on getting an open house going. You can see a picture here for our first open house that's went very well. We're going to do that again. It's good way for us to bring the community in to see who we are and what we do. And finally, I wanted to end this with some photographs of police officer Christine Schuler, known as Christy in the police department. She's a detective investigator. She is the juvenile unit now, so pretty much she handles all the stuff that we used to have 3 or 4 people handle. She handles all the major cases involving juveniles. She was recognized by the Care House for an award ceremony they had last week, that Governor Snyder presented her a certificate and talked about her and some other police officers in Oakland County that have been doing a really good job dealing with youths that are victims of significant crimes that go into Care House, and how well that's been going. The speaker there was Mr. John Walsh, and he did an exemplary job talking about the effect that law enforcement can have on crimes against children. We're dedicated to continuing the work we do with the community we serve, as well as to assure as best we can that Troy remains a great place to live, work, and do business. So with that, I can answer any questions that you may have, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief?
Thank you.
On behalf of the council, please pass along our thanks. I also see that Nancy Morrison, the executive director for the coalition, is here this evening, and I know she's an integral part in her organization also. So thanks.
Certainly.
Thanks to all the officers, and thanks to all the volunteers for sure.
I'll pass it on. Thank you.
Our next order of business is C2, the Economic Development Activity Update. And I see Glenn Lapin is coming forward. Did you want to reintroduce this? City Manager? I noticed that cup of coffee in that picture, and I noticed that you didn't have just one hand on it. You had both hands to make sure nobody took that coffee from you there.
Well, I did the safety training, so I wanted to make sure there are no spills. But Glenn Lapin is here because I don't know if everyone has heard the presentation at one time or another in Glenn Lapin, but the city of Troy is fortunate to have an economic development person of Glenn's magnitude, not to mention his experience, but also his demeanor. Because in economic development, there's a couple of things that you have to be able to do. You have to take no for an answer quite frequently. You have to chase down a lot of potential opportunities that most of the time don't pan out, and you have to create success and jobs and investment in the community, and Glenn is one of the best at that business, and so we're fortunate to have him here to give this presentation of what's happening in Troy and everything that his team is doing.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Our presentation's done.
I've had the opportunity to be with Glenn at several grand openings and ribbon cuttings, and he is an asset to the city, and we appreciate all that you do, for sure.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. What I'd like to do is provide you with an update on economic development activity here in the city. And in the past year, 2013, we've seen some excellent progress in activity, and I think you can see it as you drive around. I know many of you have attended various ribbon cuttings and grand openings lately. Most of those have been for restaurants, retail. They tend to like to do a lot of that, which is great, and we'd love to support that. What I'd like to focus on tonight is more of the industrial and office sectors, so you can get a feel for what's happening in that realm, which maybe you don't hear as much about in the press. So, whereas, we've been working diligently with all sectors, and we also work closely with the commercial real estate industry. I work a little bit with CBRE. CB Richard Ellis is what it used to be called, now CBRE. It's a major commercial real estate services firm. They work around the globe. They do analysis of various communities around the country, and they analyze vacancy rates and things like that. So they recently did a study, and Troy's office vacancy rate, according to CBRE, and this is in the fourth quarter of 2013, it was about 23.8%. This compares to the fourth quarter of 2011, 2 years ago, of about 27.2%. And it was comparable at the end of 2012 as well. These numbers do not include the Kmart headquarters. They pull that out because it is technically not on the market. And if you were to put it back into the market, you could probably add pretty close to 4% onto these numbers. But generally speaking, the trend looks like it's heading in the right direction, which is what we're really aiming for. The 5-year office vacancy peak was in the third quarter of 2010, and that was close to 30%, again, without the Kmart headquarters. So you can see that traction heading downward in terms of those vacancies that are out there, which is very positive for what we're trying to do. On the industrial side, Troy's industrial vacancy rate, according to CBRE, in the fourth quarter of 2013 was 6.2%. This compares to a fourth quarter 2011 industrial vacancy rate of about 10.3%, and the 5-year industrial vacancy peak was in second quarter of 2010, and that was about 16%. So again, that trajectory comes down. Now, methodologies vary in all these analyses, and you can talk to different companies, and you might come up with different numbers. So you kind of got to use that as a caution in these numbers, but generally what we're looking at are those trends, and the trend is heading in the right direction, and that's pretty much across the board. That is also reflected in our conversations on a regular basis with the real estate community and the brokerage community. They have all indicated to us that they are busier than they've been in the past few years, and that reflects in terms of what you're seeing out there in terms of activity. So it's a very positive story that we're seeing right now. And 2013 has been an excellent year for that. On the map that we have up there kind of highlights some of the projects that have gone on in the past year, which are starting to get that needle moving in terms of the numbers on vacancy and occupancy that are starting to fill up. What I'd like to do is highlight some of those projects for you. And starting in the North Troy Corporate Park area, you see a cluster of projects up there. The big one up there, and these are more the larger projects. This does not cover every single project, obviously. I just want to highlight some of the key ones. Magna was a major development for this city. They were on Wilshire Drive. They moved up to Tower Drive, 700 Tower Drive. They've expanded their facility significantly from where they were in Wilshire. They're consolidating several of their operations in southeast Michigan, and they're moving it here to Troy. You're talking about 300 employees for that, which is a major presence from a major global company like Magna, which is phenomenal. It's 117,000 square feet, a very large footprint for them. Also in the North Troy area, Dunham's has moved its corporate headquarters to New King Drive. It's 5607 New King. It's about 40,000 square feet of space over there, and about 115 employees will be moving into there. They've already moved in most of their operations at this point. Residential Home Health, a major home health care operation, moved into Corporate Drive, and that faces Crooks, actually, so you can see the sign up there right now, about 45,000 square feet, and 200 employees are going in there. These are major operations. The old Hilex building, which has been vacant for a number of years up on Square Lake, has been like that since Hilex moved out of there. And Mahindra, which is an operation that's currently in Troy over closer to John R. and Technology Drive area, they're expanding their operations. So Mahindra is opening up an automotive technology design center in that facility. They were looking at other opportunities. And they have operations in the western part of the state more, but worked with them closely to make sure they opened up here. And this facility we think is going to work fabulous for them. So it's a great addition. And they're looking at about 50 employees initially, and that could start growing from there as you get up to 100 employees, hopefully by the end of 2014. So it's a great new addition. Tata Engineering and Innovation Center, Indian company that deals in engineering services and testing facilities. They're on Tower Drive as well, 800 Tower Drive, so right across, right near Magna that's up there. And that's about 50 employees, and they anticipate growth leading up to 100 employees eventually. So again, you start seeing some activity in the North Troy area, which has been vacant for a number of years. You all know the history pretty much with EDS originally up there, and originally way back when, you're talking about that whole exit off of I-75 and Crooks was initially the corporate headquarters for Chrysler. It was the anticipation at that time. Then they were out in Auburn Hills. So a lot of history in that neck of the woods up there. But now, with the EDS going out, they create a lot of vacancies. Now we're starting to see some of that come back. When companies move from one location to another, like Magna did, we always get concerned about where they're leaving. You don't want to leave another hole. But what's good in this case, on Wilshire Drive, another company is moving in there. NS International, which is a division of Nippon Seiki, and they're a huge operation. They're going into the old facility where Magna was at 600 Wilshire Drive, about 111,000 square feet or so. You're talking about 171 employees they're expecting eventually to move in there. They're currently renovating the space out there, so that's a great addition. They currently have smaller offices in Troy right now. Doran Mayhew moved their corporate headquarters right across the street from this building. They moved in there, about 200 employees, 62,000 square feet. HTC Global Services, which is currently at Sheffield, down at 3270 West Big Beaver, purchased the old AT&T building at 100 East Big Beaver, right, again, kitty corner from here, behind Kona Grill. They're putting some money into that in terms of renovating it and attracting new business into there. Very positive. And right next door to this facility is DMC Children's Hospital. You can see some of the site work taking place right now. They'll be going in there, and that's about, we'll employ 70 people at that point. So that's will be a good addition as well. On the Maple Corridor, we all know about United Shore Financial Services. We've been to the opening over there. That's about 1,100 employees in the building over at Maple and Stevenson. You also are aware of the MJR Troy Grand, which is under construction now, the movie theater, 16 theaters. That's about 70 new jobs. They still expect to open in May, weather permitting. So, and you can see the construction is taking place, which is pretty impressive when you see it. Gallagher Kaiser Corporation on the industrial side over in West Chicago. They have an excellent presence on I-75. You can see their sign, which is what they wanted. So they're over there, and that's about 100 employees. They moved their corporate headquarters there as well. Entertainment Publications, we've talked about before. We went to the opening on that. That's 131 employees approximately, and they're over on Crooks. And along Maple Road as well, Toyota of Troy is doing a dealership off of Maple Lawn. And Kia facility is supposed to be going into where the Toyota facility used to be on Maple Lawn. So you can see more development and improvement and expansion going on. Along the Stevenson Highway corridor, Rapid Global Business Solutions is a company that will be moving its headquarters here. They purchased a building, 24,000 square feet at 1200 Stevenson Highway, their new headquarters. Witzenman, which currently has major operations here along Stevenson, they're expanding and they purchased, or they're leasing a facility right next door to them, which is the HOV Services facility on Stevenson. Continental Food Service purchased 30,000 square feet at 700 Stevenson Highway for food production. They're the caterers. They provide food production for the Ovation, which is the boat that goes along the Detroit River in Lake St. Clair, very successful operation. About 50 employees are there at Continental. And Toyota Gosei continues to improve its facility, 73,000 square feet. They're over at 1,400 Stevenson Highway. And they have sales and technical operations there, and it's about 230 employees. So as you can see, 2013 economic development activity has been very positive. The projects that I've just talked about that are up on that map, you're talking about close to 3,300 employees. So that's a lot. These are the employees that are going to be patronizing our restaurants. They're going to be patronizing the retail, the stores, the shops. Many of them are going to choose to live here. They're going to be buying homes. So this is what generates economic development activity, which is what we're really trying to go after. So we anticipate continued progress in 2014. And the city's economic development strategy going forward, and as it has been in the past, is really to emphasize those partnerships that enable us to help attract and to retain the employees and the businesses that are here. So we work with the existing and prospective businesses with the resources necessary to locate in Troy and so they can grow. And our primary partners that we've been working closely with, Automation Alley, Walsh College, the Troy Chamber, Oakland County's Economic Development Office, and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And through these and other partners, the city is able to address business needs by meeting directly with businesses and company executives directly. To give you an example, the city's partnership with the statewide Intern in Michigan program provides Troy companies with direct access to college students seeking internships via the City of Troy website. These internships often translate into full-time positions, thereby becoming a key source for companies seeking quality talent. In addition, the city co-sponsors an Oakland County Small Business Center program called Perspectives, and it's held right here in City Hall. This program brings together local CEOs on a monthly basis at City Hall to address specific needs that each company is facing. So there are various tools out there that we offer to the companies. In 2014, the city is planning to partner with the Troy Chamber and Oakland County Small Business Center on a targeted business assistance program focused on the Maple Corridor and at the city's south end. Additional attention will be given to the Maple Road Corridor through the master plan update process, which will be beginning shortly, and a potential targeted market analysis to identify opportunities for future residential products along that southern Maple Corridor area. So city management looks forward to working with our partners to build upon Troy's standing as Michigan's best place to live and the state's premier address for business, retail, and commerce. And certainly want to thank all of you for your support. It means a lot to the businesses that you're out there and talking with them and meeting with them, and it's been great. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have it.
Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you.
Any questions for Glenn? Good job. Good news.
Thank you.
Almost a mini State of the City update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Mark Miller also for being part of that. Our next order of business is C3, a proclamation for Random Acts of Kindness Week. And I would ask Nancy Morrison, Troy Community Coalition Executive Director, to come to the podium. And I'd like to come down and read the proclamation. And if Community Affairs Director Cindy Stewart could meet me there also, I'll be right there. Hopefully they're watching. We were hoping to have a couple of kids with us this evening, but we understand they're studying. It's really an honor for me to read this proclamation, if I could, to you, Nancy. This is a proclamation for Random Acts of Kindness Week, which is February 10th through the 16th of 2014. Whereas the City of Troy is committed to celebrate the role simple acts of kindness plays in encouraging authentic, caring connections in schools, organizations, and communities. And whereas February 10th through the 16th, 2014 is recognized internationally as Random Acts of Kindness Week, a time to remind everyone of the positive effects of kindness and the power to improve the quality of life. And whereas 2014 marks the 20th year, the Random Acts of Kindness Foundation has celebrated kindness by providing materials and support for people in thousands of communities who participate with local kindness events. And whereas Random Acts of Kindness Week is a celebration of simple kindness that encourage people to tap into their own human spirit and share kindness with one another, thereby nourishing and strengthening our communities. And whereas Random Act of Kindness could be as simple as shoveling your elderly neighbor's driveway or sidewalk, walking a neighbor's dog, volunteering for a local nonprofit organization such as the Troy Community Coalition, or at your place of worship, bring a soup to a sick friend, or simply a smile and a hug to someone going through a rough time. And whereas the Troy Community Coalition promotes the message of Random Acts of Kindness through their annual Incredible Kids program scheduled for February 27th, this program spotlights so many wonderful young people that have made a positive impact in our community by performing random acts of kindness for their family, their neighbors, or while at school. And whereas Troy Youth Assistance also recognizes and honors young people in Troy who have made exemplary contributions to our community, both organizations know the importance of random acts of kindness in growing a caring and healthy community. And now therefore be it resolved that the Troy City Council hereby proclaims February 10th through the 16th, 2014 as Random Acts of Kindness Week in the City of Troy. And be it further resolved that the Mayor and City Council encourage each and every member of our community to practice random acts of kindness throughout the entire year. Studies show that giving to others helps us live more meaningful lives. It's presented this third day of February 2014, signed by myself, all members of City Council. Congratulations and thanks so much for what you do for the community. Thank you, Nancy. I know you want to say a couple words here also.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to let you know we will be hosting our 13th annual Incredible Kid Recognition. And we started that event because it is actually a form of prevention. Research shows us that when kids feel that they are part of a healthy community and adults care about them and they want them to grow up healthy and drug-free, then they are less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. So every year we ask adults to nominate children for their random acts of kindness so that we can recognize children between the ages of 5 and 12 who have made a positive impact, again, in their schools, neighborhoods, in their families, and in their communities. And you should all have a nomination form in front of you. We have actually extended the deadline, so we will now hold it open until February 5th, which is Wednesday. So I know you all know some incredible kids, so you still have a little bit of time to nominate somebody. And I just wanted to share with you a couple of things that have stood out in my mind of children that we have recognized in the past. Last year, we recognized a Girl Scout troop who volunteered their time at Heartland Healthcare Center, and they helped the seniors make Christmas decorations. They sang Christmas carols, and they also donated Girl Scout cookies to our troops overseas. Another one that stands out in my mind is a mother nominated her son. The father was an alcoholic and he had abandoned the family, and the mother was crying and said to her son, "I wish I could purchase you, a nice home to live in." And he said to his mom, "I don't need a nice house, Mom. I just need your love." And that was enough to get him nominated as an incredible kid. So please take the time, nominate a child. And it's open to the public as well. So if anybody is interested, you can call the Coalition office at 248-823-5088, and we can make sure we get you a nomination form. Thank you so much.
one for Troy Youth Assistance as well. They do their youth recognition, and it's going to be April 16th at Troy High this year. And they are taking nominations for elementary, middle, and high school, so they go beyond the 12-year-olds, and they're looking for kids who've done heroic acts or random acts of kindness, and they would like the nominations to come in by February 16th. So if you know any elementary, middle, or high school kids that live in the city of Troy, please go to Troy Youth Assistance website, and they would like you to nominate those children.
Thank you. All that positive energy this evening. And our next presentation for C4 is a legislative update by Representative Martin Hauerlich. Good evening, Martin. Those are tough acts to follow there. Good evening.
Indeed, a lot of good things going on. It is good to be here before you, Mayor Slater, and members of the Troy City Council. I also want to bring to your attention another week that happens to be this week, which is National School Counseling Week, and that runs from the 3rd of February, which is today, through the end of the week, the 7th of February. The Governor's State of the State address was on January the 16th, about 2.5 weeks ago, and I was pleased to have our mayor, Dane Slater, as well as Mayor Pro Tem Dave Henderson. We had Clausen Mayor Penny Lubes up in Lansing as well. I want to thank the two of you, as well as Clausen's mayor, for making the challenging trek up to Lansing, and it was one of the many snowy nights that we have had. And of course, at the same time that you and I were traveling, our road crews here in Troy were working very hard. I've got to say that I am proud to say I'm from Troy. I always have been, but it is great to see the work that our folks are doing on the roads this year. It's challenging. I'm glad I don't have to look at the budgetary impact that will have. That's your job, but they're doing a good job. So the Governor's State of the State address was about 2.5 weeks ago, and the relevance, of course, is that it really sets the tone for the Governor's agenda for 2014. The Governor looked back at the accomplishments over his first 3 years in office. Of course, I was only in the legislature for one of those years. For actually a chunk of that, I was on the City Council here. But some of the accomplishments that the Governor listed were as follows. Invested more than $230 million in new road improvement projects without raising taxes. That's actually ongoing for communities across the state. We're actually in that year right now. Identified fraud and abuse in state welfare programs and took steps to reduce it. Codified a mental health court system to help rehabilitate offenders, and that's going to actually have a profound impact, I believe, on criminal justice and also the safety in our communities going forward, as well as the general health and well-being of our fellow men and women in Michigan. Crack down on unemployment insurance for those who fail a drug test. Authorized increased capacity for craft breweries, which both reduces regulations on businesses and creates job growth. Led the nation in innovative crowdfunding legislation, which enables business startups. And I'll add, there's actually a new bill being introduced right now to establish what they call micro stock exchanges for Michigan residents only. They could buy and sell shares, and it would be regulated by the state. So it would actually allow for the raising of capital in a more effective way, of course providing safeguards to Michigan residents as well. One of the big things the governor did when he came into office was he wanted to address the budget issues earlier than they had been. It keeps the legislature moving very quickly at the beginning of the year, but they've done that 3 years in a row, going into the 4th year of that. This year, the governor will be actually delivering his proposed budget this Wednesday. So that's going to be a big year for all of us in the legislature, as well as municipalities and schools, and really for Michigan residents, Wednesday's a very important day. Eliminated, of course, the job-killing Michigan business tax, eliminated the budget deficit, and restructured the tax code to spur job growth, cut red tape to help our veterans find jobs, and many of these things, actually most of these things are very bipartisan, by the way. Made landmark reforms to save the state employee and state teacher retirement programs, which will save taxpayers more than $20 billion. Eliminated lifetime benefit perks for legislators, which happened before I came in office, which is good, including the legislature, and cut benefits for legislators. Going forward, the governor laid out a number of different policy initiatives, including adoption of the recommendations of the Mental Health and Wellness Report to help people with mental illness, substance abuse disorders, and developmental disabilities. Improving school safety is another area that he mentioned. Protecting the environment, particularly through combating invasive species and developing a framework for a comprehensive energy policy for the state. One of the interesting things that he is now advocating is a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution, which he supports. Assistance for schools and communities in financial distress, tax relief for low and middle income families, collecting talent and opportunity with economic and education summits. The governor is a big proponent of that. Creation of a new Michigan office of New Americans to attract immigrants to Michigan. You may have heard the governor actually made his appointment of the individual who is actually a Korean, I think he's a Korean immigrant, to run that office. And of course, education reforms by adoption of the recommendation of the Michigan Council for Educator Effectiveness. Clearly, there's also, and this is me speaking now, clearly there's a need for strong and vibrant Detroit and consistent policy and economic reforms to ensure the vibrancy and stability of our communities and schools. These areas of local government and education will play a major role in public policy and appropriations for the foreseeable future. They're major areas. The economy is improving, but these challenges remain to be addressed in a comprehensive and solidifying manner. On another note, I did receive new committee assignments for the new year 2014. I received those at the end of December. My new committees are Energy and Technology, Health Policy, Judiciary, and Oversight. These committees all represent policy areas of interest to me, and I believe they are areas where I can do my part to represent the people of Michigan and our district to ensure that our state continues to be a great place to live and call home. An exciting item to note is that my first bill was both passed by the House and the Senate and signed into law by Governor Snyder at the end of last year. It's a very benign bill. There was not a single person who voted against it. It was a package of bills. There's a drive by the county and city clerks as well as the Secretary of State to unify election filing deadlines. And this bill, which now is Public Act 254 of 2013, as part of that initiative. I have a number of other bills that were introduced in December and January, as well as a number of bills that were introduced earlier last year. I'm always happy to talk to people who have interests and concerns, and also public policy is an area that we need to have good conversations about, and we need to be very open-minded and willing to listen to each other as part of the discourse and marketplace of ideas that our country is so great for. In order to get legislation passed and to effectuate good public policy, it really requires us to listen to each other and to challenge our own preconceived notions and beliefs. As far as advancing a bill, one of the biggest challenges is, there are 109 other members of the House. They need to also be able to understand and grapple with the perceived problem that the bill is attempting to remedy, and oftentimes you don't need a bill to remedy the problem. The problem is oftentimes something that is administrative and therefore can be remedied much quicker and with much more cooperation from the parties involved through an administrative way. In closing, I would like, actually there is one other really important item, is the area of road funding, and certainly with the freeze-thaw cycles, and of course this being a very challenging winter for local officials as well as all of the road crews across the state of Michigan, we're seeing a lot of huge potholes and road structural issues. And so you may recall about 2 months ago the state unveiled a number of different one-time projects, half the $230 million. The other half, the $115 million second half, will be unveiled within the next 2 months. So the first round, the City of Troy, as you all are well aware, received 2 projects, one on Livernois Road to rebuild the bridge over the drain, and the other to finish the project up at Crooks Road and I-75. City management has been very eager to assist us in compiling this list that we submit, we as an individual legislator submit to the committee, which is comprised of members of the Transportation Subcommittee on Appropriations in the House and also the Transportation Subcommittee of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. And those folks get together, work with the governor, and figure out where the money is going to go. The reason why this is that way is because this is not Act 51 money. This is actually general fund discretionary money. And what that means is it's very important for us to timely get in our projects, and we did. And the city has quite a few projects, obviously the top 2 being Long Lake Road. Number 1 is Big Beaver, and number 2 is Long Lake Road, and obviously there's a whole long list of unmet needs. So hopefully we'll get a 1 or 2 funding for those projects. The other reason why it's relevant is now that we're going into the appropriations process, if there's not going to be new sources of funding for road money, we need to make sure there's discipline and diligence of the policymakers to ensure that we get at least another $230 million for fiscal 2015. I think there's probably going to be a desire among the legislature and local officials to have a more systematic and understandable approach for distributing that money, because nobody really knows how the money is being distributed except for those who are involved. They're trying to do a good job, I believe, to not make it political, but if this is going to be something that's ongoing, we probably need to make some rules of engagement, so to say. So you can look forward to that coming in another 2 months. And I do also want to mention office hours coming up. I went a little crazy in scheduling office hours. I've got quite a few in February. I have this Friday at the Community Center. I'll be there from 11 to 12 in the morning to noon. This Saturday, the 8th, from 3 to 4:30 at the Troy Library. Next Friday at the Community Center, which is the 14th. It happens to be Valentine's Day, so I'll be at the Community Center from 11 to 1. And then February the 24th, Monday the 24th, at the Clausen Library from 3:30 to 5. We have a senior brigade, which is part of the Attorney General's program, the Senior Brigade program, at the Clausen Senior Center on Friday the 21st at 11 a.m. And I personally spring for lunch for everybody that shows up. And then we also have a property tax informational meeting on Saturday the 22nd from 10 to 11:30 at the Clausen Library. And so those are a few events that are coming up this month. And as your state representative, certainly I am eager and would encourage you to interact with me in my office to try and craft good public policy. So I'm here to answer any questions or attempt to answer any questions that you might have for me. It's a big state, so there are quite a few things that you could ask me about that I have to go and find the answer to.
Thank you. Any questions for Representative Hauerleck? Just a comment. Thank you for the invitation. It was an interesting night driving up and driving back, but it was also interesting to be there. And I thank you, and I think I speak for Mayor Pro Tem Henderson. Thank you for the invitation. And I'm glad that you mentioned roads because, as you can imagine, we get lots of feedback on the roads. And because of what's happened this year with the big freeze and the thaw, the potholes are worse maybe than they've ever been, and they're getting to the point where they're dangerous. And I would just encourage the state to find a solution. And as we know, those are not city roads that are Long Lake and Big Beaver, and the city shouldn't have to pay for that from my perspective. So I would just encourage you to speak loudly for us on regards to the roads. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no carryover items or public hearings scheduled this evening. Don't see anyone signed up for public comment for items on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses. So we will move to regular business. There are no postponed items either. And when I look at regular business, I don't see any regular business scheduled this evening. No request for closed session. So I will move to the consent agenda. Is there anyone on council that wishes to pull an item from the consent agenda this evening? If somebody would like to move the resolution, please.
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
Move item J1A, approval of all J items not removed for discussion as printed.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Henderson and supported by Councilman Fleming that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed. Discussion. The vote, Ms. Bittner?
Mayor Slater?
Yes.
Councilmember Campbell?
Yes.
Councilmember Fleming?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Councilmember Teetz?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next is memorandums and future council agenda items. There is an announcement for a public hearing scheduled for February the 10th, 2014, a rezoning application for a proposed professional/medical building on west of Rochester, south side of Colebrook, 3545 Rochester Road, from R1C, which is one family residential district, to CB, a community business district. There's also an announcement that on February the 10th, 2014, we will be visiting a zoning ordinance text amendment for assisted living facilities, ZOTA-246. There are no memorandums submitted by City Council this evening. So our next order of business is public comment for items not on the agenda from Troy residents and businesses, and I would call on Mary Ann Bernardi, Troy resident. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to talk about trees in Troy. I hope that you've all had a chance and opportunity to look at Troy Times, January 30th. And on the second front page, thousands of trees will be clear-cut for condos. Troy has been known as a city of trees, and is something that I know that many of us have taken much pride in, and I wonder if we're losing that title or if we've lost it already, because as we continue forward with the lack of policy about trees, every day our trees are in jeopardy, as you can see from this article. This is just one site. Big Beaver Corridor study was a very expensive study. We paid for it. And one of the consultants' final points to us was that our trees, he said, our trees are our most valuable assets. I've never forgotten those words years and years ago. Never have forgotten. They're just etched in my mind. So when I see what is happening here, and that inertia is putting our most valuable assets at risk, is very, very, very troubling. City Council did consider a tree preservation ordinance in 2006 and then voted to postpone it indefinitely. I think this is making our most valuable asset, putting it at risk, and I say that it's irreplaceable asset because it takes decades and decades for trees to come to full maturity. So when people say, well, you can just plant a tree, well, you can plant a little tree, but it'll take decades before you see the beauty that Troy really has exemplified over the years. I don't want to take much of your time, but I just, in case you haven't read this article, I'd like to point out some major points. I think that the City Council, the Planning Commission, has tried to do their due diligence, but as is very clear in this article, their hands have been tied because of the lack of the tools that they need. And the tools are the tools that have come before you and not been addressed. And so I'm really hoping that you will move quickly on this. The very first page in the first sentence says, saying that their hands were tied, a frustrated planning commission unanimously approved this development, which meant that 3,000 mature trees of 3,000 trees, many of significant size, will come down. And there was nothing that they could do because they had no tree preservation ordinance. All right, I'll just refer you to the article.
Thank you. I did read the article, and we are going to be visiting this within the next couple months.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. That is all that I see that is signed up to speak this evening. There are no council referrals. The next item of business is council comments. Comments this evening? Councilman Teets.
Could you just clarify what we're going to be reviewing in a couple months regarding trees?
We, I think it's next Tuesday evening on the 11th, we are having a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, and that is part of our intent is to meet with them very frequently, and I think, I don't want to speak for City Manager Kishnick, but I think during that meeting we're going to find out what are important topics that we need to address in the future. And I've spoken to several members of the Planning Commission that are frustrated, as Ms. Bernardi did indicate this evening, with a lack of a tree ordinance. And so I think there's an intent from several members of the Planning Commission, and I join them to revisit this and have a good discussion and try to revisit what was brought before us. I understand that that was a very contentious issue back then, but I think it needs to be revisited personally. Councilman Teets. City Manager Kishnick, did you want to add anything?
You know, I think you described it very well, Mayor. What we are proposing as a group, and Mark Miller and Dick Carlisle and Brent Savadant and I will be presenting a process where the two groups get together at the February 11th meeting, as the mayor suggested, allowing people to identify some of the top topics. Trees is something that continues to come up, and I've not talked to other planning commission members like the mayor, but I'm sure if that's the part of the conversation, that will be something that's brought out.
Councilman Teets.
I just know the 2006 proposal that was brought up was incredibly restrictive and really harmed property owners and what they could do with their property. I know that was a huge issue, and I'd certainly oppose anything that would limit folks from doing reasonable development with their own land. So I'm curious, anxious, and curious.
I'm not here to say that I supported what happened in 2006, but I think there is room for compromise, and there is room to make sure that we don't lose 3,000 trees in a development. I think that's very frustrating for the people that have to okay projects when they know they're just going to clear the land out completely. So we can talk about that further in a study session. Any other comments from council? Any comments on the reports this evening that were presented in the agenda?
Mayor?
Councilwoman Hoderick.
I just wanted to mention that in the paper, sometimes you'll see the pictures from the ribbon cuttings of the businesses that are opening new businesses. And I think it's important to understand what a significant event it is for each of those businesses. And we've had an opportunity to enjoy many opportunities to go do this, and we all try to make it to as many of those as we can. It's a very positive feeling, and to be there and see that. And then Mr. Lapin's presentation tonight is indicative of the economic bounce back that we're seeing. And I think our role collectively is to come behind that logically and pragmatically as we see more of that development provoke difficult decisions. And I am seeing a wonderful dialogue that is going on between businesses, council members, and I just wanted to comment that it's a positive sign, and I really appreciate the economic development report tonight, which summed it up, so much of what's going on that's so much behind the scenes. Together with the safety rating, residents, businesses, all of us can feel very good about being in Troy right now, and we need to seize the opportunity of continuing to turn the corner together. It's a really positive thing to see.
Thank you. Any other comments? I don't see anyone signed up for comments on items on or not on the agenda from members of the public outside of Troy. So our next item of business is a study session, and we will be adjourned for 5 minutes and reconvene in the boardroom to talk about bond ratings. We're adjourned. topic. But I know we asked City Manager Kishnick to put this together because I think it's very important to all of us to understand what our bond, what is bond rating, how do we get bond ratings, and is our fund balance somewhat tied to bond ratings and those other issues. So look forward to hearing what the City Manager has to present this evening. I see our bond expert is here to speak also, but I'll turn this over to City Manager Kishnick.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a follow-up to the Troy Story presentation, where we did talk about where we had been, where we are, and now trying to lay the groundwork where we're going as we enter the budget season. And before we get into all that, one of the things that we had talked about was looking at what exactly do the rating agencies look at. And so we've put together a team of Mark and Tom and myself, and we let Bobby come along since his tenure in the business is much longer than all of ours put together. Put this presentation together to go over the bond rating analysis, just what they are and why do we need bond ratings, who performs them, how do they compare, what's the criteria used, talk about our bond rating, and then there's a video at the end if we need, but probably not by the time Bobby gets done. But some of this is sort of a reference material as we go forward. Clearly, the fund balance is a large part of it, and Bobby's going to talk about that. But many other things go into it. Some things we control, some things we don't control to go into considering the bond rating. Just so happens, and I sent this out today, that the Fitch rating for the city is under review, and we assembled a team to do that conference call, and that preliminary and very draft release is there today. So I wanted to get that to everyone, just so you can see some of the information and criteria that's talked about. So with that, this is Bobby's presentation. I'll let Bobby go through this, and it's meant to really dig down and drill down into what goes into the bond rating and our bond rating itself. So with that, I will let Mr. Budzinski go over it.
Thank you, Brian. For those of you that may not know who I am, I'm Bobby Budzinski, president of Budzinski Company. Our firm has been the City of Troy's municipal advisor since Frank Gerstenecker was a young city manager. We are delighted to be invited back. Our philosophy is that it's a privilege to work for every client, not a given that we will get invited back. Brian called about a month ago, 2 months ago, and said, "Can you get the rating agencies to come out and meet with us?" And I said, "No, Brian, I can't." He said, "Why not? I'll pay them." I said, "Brian, they will not meet with you." The rating process is a credit rating report on the city or any municipality. Moody's, Standard & Poor's, and Fitch, they're very secretive and they're very compact in terms of what they do, but they think they're independent. And both of them have gone through a new methodology, or two of the three have gone through a new methodology. And when you read it, you will almost think it's identical, and you will say, wait a minute, this has been stolen from somebody else's term paper. But they will tell you it's selective and it's all that. Well, it is a rating that investors use when they buy your bonds. Up until about 2008 or 9, when the financial crisis hit, you would submit your information about your new bond issue. You would get a rating that kind of pertained to that bond issue and all of the bonds outstanding of the city or the municipality at the time. And they would never call you again until you did another bond issue. And in 2008, the rating agency started doing a review process. The higher your rating or the lower your rating, the more frequently your review process is. If you are in the higher category, which AA or AA plus, or AAA or AA plus, you are probably reviewed between 9 months and 14 months. If you're lower, it's about 18 months to 2 years. And then it kind of, when you start getting in the middle, it could be about 2 years. And then when you're lower, it goes back up to that, you know, it kind of feathers off, if you will, or brackets off. The city of Troy has a AAA by 3 of the rating agencies and a AA plus by 1 of the rating agencies. The AA plus is from Fitch Investor Service, which just did a review. The only bonds that they currently rate are those of the Building Authority, which will be retired in 2015. We refinanced those in 2012, I think. And we put those into what they call capital improvement bonds, which were new and innovative in 2001. So the building authorities have gone away. They will tell you it's a private review, it is independent, and it's supposed to make you comparable to everybody else in the nation. So if we go to why do you do it? You do it generally in the issuance of debt. Very seldom will a municipality go to a rating agency and say, what is my rating? You just don't do it. There's no reason to do it. There's a cost associated with it. The rating agencies have a responsibility to investors that if you go to them, that they have to tell the investors. They get their money from issuers that rate or that issue debt, and they also get their money from subscribers, investors, hedge funds, brokerage firms that pay for this service to get all these ratings, to get an update when a rating changes. So you are not necessarily their only client. They're not, there's no attorney-client privilege, if you will, to use a lawyer's expression. The market has changed in 2008, as we all know. Today, very seldomly are bonds sold without 1 or more ratings. The due diligence that is required by the MSRB, the Municipal Securities Rulemaking Board, and the Securities and Exchange Commission requires that anybody that buys bonds, they have to look at everything they possibly can. Official statements that you've seen in relationship to bond offerings. They have to look at rating reports if the bonds are rated. You know, for years, we used to get these reports, we'd put them in a file, we would never get asked by an investor, can we have a copy of it? Now, almost 99% of the time, before they bid, they say, where is the Moody's, where is the Fitch, where is the S&P report? We need to see that before we can bid on the bonds. State law requires that all bonds issued in excess of $5 million have a rating. The industry fought that. Your municipal advisors and your bond attorneys all across the state fought that. It used to be $1 million. And in 2001, when they revised the Municipal Finance Act, everybody was buying bonds. A lot of times bonds were insured. As we went through that exercise here with the DDA bonds, we had bond insurance. You know, they were putting bond insurance on almost everything. So the ratings of the bond insurance were AAA. They didn't care what the underlying rating was. Now they care. There aren't as many insurers, as we all know. So the truth is that anything over $1 million, I mean, automatically has to be rated. We are getting requests a lot of times for issuers under $1 million to have bond ratings. They want that due diligence by an independent third party to say, this is a good or bad credit. Who performs these ratings? As we talked, there's Standard & Poor's, which currently rates all of the city's bond issues at AAA, the highest rating that you can get. Currently, better than the United States of America. Fitch Investor Service, or Fitch Ratings, they rate the Building Authority a AA+. They asterisk that with in their publication that there's an unpublished rating of a AAA for unlimited tax bonds. If they said, did you review it, they would say no. So can you say your unlimited tax bonds are AAA? No, you can't say that, but they put that in there. Moody's Investor Service, we have not asked Moody's to rate the bonds in a long time. Moody's was very tough on Michigan municipalities in the 80s. They never came out of that. They kind of thought we were in a rust belt. They wouldn't agree with that, you know, we're a comeback state or that we could change anything. They thought we were extremely dependent on the auto industry and tourism, which is hard to fight. I mean, those are out of your control. So we have not been rated, or the city has not been rated by Moody's in a long time. Depending on the size of the bond issue, if you're under $50 million, you can get away with just one rating per issue. If you get over that 50 million, you might be required to have 2 ratings. Here's a rating chart that we provided. The city is in the extremely strong rating category or the very strong AA. You know, you can't get any better. So you see where you're at. To give you an idea, I think there's about 3 cities or townships in the state that currently have a AAA. To my knowledge, there are now only 2 counties in the state that carry the AAA. So, you know, you're the best of the best, as Channel 7 says every year when they do the graduating class on TV. You're the best of the best. How is the rating determined? As I indicated before, the rating is supposed to be, if you take a look at Troy and you don't put Michigan on it, and you take a look at Troy in maybe Texas, if there is such a community, are you equal? Is your ability to pay your debt service and your ability to handle situations such as emergencies that may occur, tornadoes, the great snowfall that we've had, can you handle these changes? Because you've got to put a lot more road salt out. If you had a tornado that's demolished your major taxpayer, they're not going to pay for a year. Are you equivalent to somebody else? And it's supposed to be a look and see. As I indicated, Moody's just recently changed their rating criteria. It is more quantitative than it ever has been. There was always a portion that was judgmental, and in the committee room, which we were never privy to, nor were any of the professionals, we were always told there was a judgment factor there. Today, that judgment factor is gone. Some people say it's due to the fact that Standard & Poor's downgraded the federal government from a AAA to a AA+. And the government threatened to sue them, the federal government, because it wasn't quantitative enough. So now they've put the quantitative factor into it. Basically, they add up all the numbers and say this is where you're at. The chart that's here is a circle, obviously, and I don't want to start with AIM, but I'll start at the top. Pardon? No, so you're, okay. Yep, okay. Revenue and expenditure assumptions. One of the things that the rating agencies has started to question is how do you prepare your budget? Do you take last year's numbers at 1.5% because that's a consumer price index, and say that everything is going up 1.5% and then adopt it? No, that's not a good thing. They want to know that you have done due diligence in preparing your budget. Are these realistic? And they really don't want you to underestimate your revenues and overestimate your expenditures just to make it look good. They want you to be diligent in what you do. They want to know what it takes to adopt budget amendments. Can you do it at every city council meeting? Can you do it monthly? Can you do it quarterly? How often can you do this? If there's an emergency, what can you do? Which again is not, you know, how do you say that that's a good policy? Long-term financial planning. This has been part of the rating agency's policies for a long time. Do you have a capital needs program? have you looked at what you need 3 years, 5 years? Have you talked about how you're going to fund this? And I've done seminars on this. I think Tom's seen some of them at government finance officers. And we tell municipalities, I don't care if it's a yellow sheet of paper that says we're going to do these things in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We expect to fund them this way, whether it's cash, bonds, or foundation, or grants, or a guess. And, you know, how are you going to pay this back? They want to see planning. As I tell a lot of people, you know, we drive around the state and we see signs that says that Beaumont is one of the top 100 hospitals in the country. What does that mean? Does that mean that if you go in there, you have a 90% chance of coming out alive? No. It means that what they do, they have policies in place that it should run like a fine oiled machine. And that's what the rating agencies really want you guys to do the same thing. They want you to be able to make changes if need be, and that they don't affect you. You know, you're not going to shut down something because something has happened. You know, so that's the long-term planning and the capital needs. Investment management policies. As many of you know, the biggest investment management chaos was Orange County, California. You know, the treasurer there made speeches on a national basis, said that he knew what was going on. When it fell apart, he said, I didn't know what was happening. Many believe that the legislative body could have questioned him, it was a male, Bob Citron was his name, and said, hey, why didn't you fix this? Well, you didn't have to report to anybody. They want to know how the legislative body is reviewing the investment policies. Can they change them? Are you better or worse than state policies? In Michigan, and the rating agencies have acknowledged this, we have a pretty tight investment policy. Public Act 20 is pretty restrictive on idle cash. You have a little more leeway when it comes to your pension funds. You know, you can go into equities, but your idle cash, for the most part, you cannot go in equities. You can't go out more than, what, 270 days, right? So, I mean, you're pretty tight. There is a lot of times they'll ask, do you have any policies that are more restrictive than state law? Most municipalities say no, which is the truth. And it's not a black eye or it's not a check mark against you because it's pretty tight compared to most states. Debt management policy. I know of about 3 communities in the state that have a debt management policy. Again, the state of Michigan has a pretty tight debt policy. We always say, for quick reference, that you can bond up to 10% of your state equalized valuation, minus anything that there's dedicated revenue, such as special assessment bonds, Michigan gas-weight tax receipt bonds, and special assessment bonds. After that, it's pretty much 10%, but the Act 34 bonds or capital improvement bonds have a 5% limitation of state equalized valuation, which is inside of that limitation. Special assessment bonds have a limitation of 3% per year, 12% maximum, so it's pretty restrictive. So most places don't have it. I would not recommend doing it. You have a AAA, there's no need to do it at this point. Municipalities that are looking for a AAA, I might recommend that you do it because it gives you one more policy that you have that maybe somebody else doesn't have. Reserve and liquidity policies, they want to know, are you setting aside money? And, you know, everybody asks this question of us, they ask it of their auditors. What is a good fund balance policy? Everybody says 20% minimum. Think about that in terms of your own household. 20% of 1 year is just over a month and a half. Yeah. Okay? if you're a business individual, they always tell you a minimum of 90 days. You get your tax receipts once a year. You're not selling a product, and you may or may, you're not getting your revenue maybe 1/12 every month, or 1/6 every 2 months, or 1/3 every 2 months, and then nothing. Your revenues are coming in, you know, basically in the first 45 days of your fiscal year, maybe 60 days. So if that goes away, then you're, you know, so reserves, you know, we like to tell clients a minimum of 20%. Try to get to that 30% if you possibly can. And restrict it that it's for future years. As I indicated earlier, when we did the refinancing for the Downtown Development Authority bonds, we were able to secure the AAA from Standard & Poor's. That's due to the city's full faith and credit. The Municipal Building Authority carries a AA+ by S&P, by Fitch. And I don't know how many of you recall, but Fitch was doing one of their initial review policies, or reviews, when the city put the ballot proposal on to take it back to the current levy of what was 8.1 mils. And we said, you know, you gotta stop this review. And they said, why? I said, well, we got a ballot initiative right now going on. They said, what? And they were unaware of it, which we were kind of surprised, because they use the internet more than most of us in this room probably combined. You know, they've called me and said, we saw this on the internet. Is it true? No. Yes, it's true. No. And they were unaware of it. And we told them what was going on. Well, they did their review. They had their calls with the administration and us, and they waited until the day after the election. They called us, did it pass or fail? That Friday, they came out and they downgraded the city. And their major reason for downgrading the city was the revenue flexibility. You know, I jumped up and I stayed up. I can't tell you what I said because this is a public meeting. But I said, you're totally wrong and you're not giving the city a chance. Because if we ask for a rating because you put in reserves and you put in policies and you put in a comprehensive capital improvement plan, they wouldn't upgrade you automatically. They would want to see a history. And my argument to them was, wait a minute, we did lose the revenue flexibility. We lost it in November. You did not allow us to finish the fiscal year and to begin a new fiscal year with those limitations and see how the city handled it. You aren't giving us the chance that you tell us that we have to prove to you that we can do. Well, that went on deaf ears. And they downgraded the city, and that was their major reason for it. Some of the reasons that the city enjoys the AAA, you're in Oakland County. I'm not sure if you were in Wayne County, that you would possibly grant it. None of the gross points carry AAA. I don't know if that's indicative of being in Wayne County. I think some of it is. You have very strong income levels, very strong market value per capita, which many of you may or may not know. Macomb County, the county itself, just got downgraded by S&P. They were not upgraded by Moody's. They went to Moody's, and I think they went in December, maybe early January, and they thought they could get upgraded. And one of the major reasons was the per capita market value in Macomb County is lower than Oakland County. And that was one of the reasons that they downgraded the county. As I indicated earlier, they've gone to this quantitative rating. They're putting 30% of the rating based on a local economy, which I think is very difficult because there isn't one of us in this room that can control that. Contrary to what your taxpayers may think, and some other people may think, you have a low debt percentage as to market value. The city of Troy does not have a lot of debt when it comes to comparing it to other communities. All of your debt is for government essential purposes. There's no debt out there that's kind of tied to a developer or so forth. Yes, you have the DDA bonds, but I mean, that's economic development in a very strong economic area. Wasn't on a to-come issue and all of that, which some of you may know in Livingston County, they have a lot of special assessment debt where developers have walked. That isn't the kind of debt you have. Evan, do you want to show this video?
No, I think if you go back and you just hit the bottom part with the Standard & Poor's.
The city's overall financial profile remains very strong, in our view, in that Standard & Poor's, despite the recent decline in property values characterized by very strong revenues, 51% of operating expenditures on an unassigned basis as of the last audit, June 30th, 2012. That says a lot. I mean, your housing values have stayed strong. Your policies are in place. Carrying a AAA and having been reviewed recently, that's a major plus. Standard & Poor's came out in September and revised their criteria. They told us that probably 10% of the ratings would be lowered, 5% of the ratings would be raised. We are finding that the 10% or the higher ratings, they're getting downgraded. The lower ratings, or the 5% that are going up, or if you go back to, what slide is that? The one with all the ratings on? It says 4 rating table. The ratings that are getting upgraded are probably in the AA minus, maybe A+ category.
Is that statewide you're talking?
National. Nationwide.
But a lot of AAA are dropping to AA plus or AA plus or going to AA.
I think it was Omaha, Nebraska. And I'm not trying to be.
You just want
I don't have a contract with anybody. I think it was Omaha that, at the time they were doing Macomb County, told me that they downgraded them 2 notches.
2.
Well, what was the reason for that? Do you know?
I didn't look into it.
You didn't look into it?
They were AAA. I'm pretty sure it was Omaha. It was in Nebraska. It was either Omaha or Lincoln.
It was Nebraska, or it was Omaha.
Oh, it's okay. Thanks, Doug. And, I'm sure they were going, why us? And, as I indicated, the ratings, the categories that they allow, they put economy and tax base 30%, roughly 1/3 of the rating. Finances, 30%. You control that. You guys do a wonderful job at that. Management, 20%. One of the other things that in that management that isn't on the slides, and we talked about it in the meeting when we met with the staff to prepare this, institutional framework. And you say, what is that? And we had a long talk with S&P about it. If you're a municipality in the state of Michigan and your population is under 4,000 people, you are required to get an audit every 2 years, not every year. That hurts those people, even if they get the audit, because it's institutional framework. So it's gone to a totally quantitative. My father, as some of you may know, may not, he started the business. He said it's kind of like pulling a slot machine. And if you get 7s across, you win. If not, you get something different. It's kind of what's going to add up to the bottom. And I think he's close to right. there is no judgment. Debt, pensions. What do you do to the older municipalities that have large OPEB liabilities because they have a lot of retirees versus the younger cities that don't have retirees? Is that quite fair? I mean, even if they're doing a great job managing. Again, it's quantitative versus judgmental. And some things are out of your control.
This one, Campbell?
Have to look at the name there?
We can call you something else.
Just out of curiosity, I was just down in Kokomo, Indiana. Now I don't have all the numbers with you. I understand they had about 30% in their general fund. Now, they got hit 3 years ago by a huge tornado. That damage is still there. It took out 2 shopping centers, about 3 plants, and probably about 5 miles of homes. And they're right now, as I understand, on the verge of bankruptcy. I don't know if you know anything about those guys down there, but, and it's really, I mean, again, devastation. Nothing was ever planned. You can't, even Brian couldn't foresee that when he does his projections. That's why I think it all comes back to the money you've got put away. I mean, you just don't know what's there, and to diminish that, even as you say, 20%, 20% really. And if it was your home, it's nothing. A few payments, right?
Right.
And I know we're at over about 51%. Maybe that's too much, but I would think 30 to 40% just what I see down there. That would seem like it's pretty as safe as you can be.
I mean, it sounds like what you're saying is that the tornado hit the right spot.
Right. Well, it took all their tax base out.
Right, took all the tax base out.
So they cannot get revenue from anything.
Be equivalent to tornado taking out Ford and Dearborn.
Right, exactly right.
I mean, you can't predict that, obviously, but, and you hope it never happens to anybody, but.
You never know, right?
Yeah, look at, I don't know how, was it the 80s, tornado hit Kalamazoo?
Yeah.
They were fortunate, it wasn't as severe as you're talking about, Mr. Cameron. It was, and that was one of the first things the rating agencies looked at, was how'd you survive it? And they were fortunate that it wasn't as severe as you're talking about, but.
Did you want to show the video, or did you want us to ask some questions?
I think the questions would be good.
And see where it goes?
Yeah, and we'll have the video as a resource. It'll be on the website, and anyone can look at it.
I don't want to speak for the other council members, but what I thought was going to be kind of beneficial to us when we move forward towards budgeting, we're going to make decisions on what fund balances we should have, and I was kind of looking for some expert guidance as to what a percentage, and I think we got that tonight. But on the same hand, I believe Macomb County had a 30% fund balance, was the rumor that I heard. So there are obviously other factors that go into your bond rating. And I was trying to jot down quickly because it wasn't in the presentation. It sounded like there were, and I guess Bobby, correct me if I'm wrong, there were about 4 categories that either got a 20% or a 30% to make up the 100% of possibly a AAA bond rating. And the management, you said, was somewhere around 20%. Fund balance, you would like to see around 30%. Institutional framework, 20%.
Well, no, Mayor, what I was talking about is that the weighting factor, 30% goes to economic and tax base.
Okay.
30% goes to finances.
Okay.
20% goes to management. And debt/pension is 20%.
20%, okay.
Now, inside of that, the tax base represents 10% of the 30%. The full value per capita, so you double your state equalized valuation divided by your population, represents 10. Your wealth, income levels is 10%. So that's how they get to the 30 of the economic tax base.
Okay.
And I think Tom and Brian both have Moody's methodology.
So kind of what I think I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we do meet just about 70% of what we're doing a good job with that 70% to get us to a AAA, and a 30% fund balance would probably be a good place to be also, as long as we keep doing all of those other things that you were talking about to make up the 70%.
Well, you gotta keep doing what you're doing.
You're doing what
You've
what's
got the
important-
AAA.
But yeah, what's important, I think, to this council is we're gonna have a debate on what do we think our fund balance should be. It's at 50 now. I think we all think that might be a little high, but I don't think this council wants to bring it down to an area where if something happened that we don't
But I
have
think
something.
given the fact that you don't have revenue flexibility.
Right.
At one time, you had a charter that was, I think, 10, and it's now 8.1. You don't have that flexibility.
Right.
So therefore, you need that revenue. You don't
It's
have.
more
rev-
important than ever, maybe.
Yeah, the higher fund balance is more important because you don't have the revenue flexibility. You can't go above your city charter. You need to vote that if you want to do that.
But even with that, when we had the conference call, all these other things being part of the basket of criteria, the fact is that without that revenue capacity, all the other stuff aside, without that, with the tax cap, you're a AA+. And I don't think there's anything you can do from our call that would matter, because you have a tax cap.
Birmingham, for example, has the capability of raising their tax rate without a vote. So they could probably get away with a lower percentage of fund balance. How low? I don't know. I've never done the analysis. But
But I'm saying, even if you had more fund balance, it doesn't matter without that revenue capacity. As soon as you had that tax cap, and they ask about it specifically.
well, they know about it.
Yeah, but I mean, they wanted to reaffirm.
They want you to tell them that
There's
they're right.
capacity.
They want you to tell them that they're right to make sure that you're not,
Yeah.
giving them the spool, the
I mean,
spin.
that was the conversation we had on the phone.
Councilman Teets?
I agree with Councilman Campbell. I don't, 30, 35, yeah, believe it or not. Really? Just write it down. 3rd of February, 9/11. It happens every once in a while. But I think that the other part of it is with that difference, that 20% that, is there, I would feel uncomfortable taking it out of the circle of the different uses that are there. I mean, if we say, well, it'd be great to spend that money, but we're putting ourselves in danger. I mean, there are things, for instance, we have a lot of legacy costs that we can do something now that will be paying dividends because we will have lower annual mandated payments for years to come. And it's easy and popular to say, yeah, let's spend the money. We've got some fun projects we'd like to work on. But 5 years from now, after those roads crumble or after that trail gets overgrown, the next city council will be in the same situation. I think with our pension obligations, yes, we're in better shape than most, but I think we can show a little bit of bravery here and say we want to be as good as we can be. And I think, you look at the firefighters' pension, which is underfunded by millions and millions of dollars. And I mean, there's lots of room with our healthcare obligations, retiree healthcare obligations, where it's, I don't know, more than $20 million is safe to say. And so if we're at 51 and we bring it down to 30, I would hate to say, well, let's pull that money out and that's good, that we can do some good things right now versus, let's make the tough decision and we're not going to get any pats on the back or smiley face emails but let's do the long-term investment in paying down our pension obligations. And I think it's something we can really make a benefit that 5 years, 10 years, when we're all off city council, that'll still be paying dividends. And frankly, there'll be more revenue that we can spend in a different way because we won't be spending it making annual payments. So I just piggybacking kind of what you were saying.
Well, I think for tonight's purposes, I mean, there's going to be a lot of discussion when the budget comes up to debate those issues. Tonight was mainly to educate the council as to what is important from the bond expert as to what does it take to maintain those AAA bond ratings. And at least from my perspective, I was given a good knowledge tonight about where we need to be at minimums. And when we have discussions in the future about whether we want to spend money or we don't want to spend money or we want to have so much cash or whatever, those are debatable issues that we'll talk about during the budget. You know, this will boil down to what kind of city do you want to have, mainly is the discussion that we'll have. You know, do you want to have a city that people want, or do you want to have a bigger savings account? So those are discussions that we'll have down the road. But as it pertains to the bond information from this evening, is there any other questions that council would like to, Councilwoman Huderick?
What is Oakland County's, what percent are they at?
Percent of
They're,
fund balance?
yeah.
I don't know the answer.
It's
We don't
over.
represent the counties.
It's a unique way. They do a very unique
But
budgeting process, but I believe it's between 40 and 50.
Well, the county also has, if you look at county reports from the rating agencies, they take into consideration the delinquent tax revolving funds as liquid cash, because they can borrow every year for those delinquent taxes if they want. You know, at one time, 83, or probably 70 of the 83 counties borrowed. I think now it's maybe 9 of the 83 that borrow. You know, some do it because the county treasurer gets the administrative fee, not in Oakland County, but other counties that they've been long serving. So they count that. They can count some other things, that other funds that the city doesn't have. So everything is unique. You know, school districts obviously are totally different too, because, you know, they don't have as many funds as the city does. So everything is unique. And that was the thing that, when I looked at the Lake St. Clair, or the Macomb County report, because we represented Macomb County when they got downgraded. We were doing a drain deal for the county drain commissioner. You know, they talk about the delinquent revolving fund in the report, basically saying how much cash is in there. But the county doesn't borrow. Well, you know, if they were to deplete that, they would then have to borrow. Now, would that be a black eye?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, it's kind of ironic how they do this.
Mayor Pro Tem Henderson.
The question still remains, and you've addressed it fairly well. 20 to 30% is the direction I see you aiming us with regard to fund balance.
Without a doubt.
And if we drop it down from the 50 to the 30 or 20, and assuming we'll do that in our budget sessions, if we choose to do that, that wouldn't get a response from Standard & Poor's or Fitch at that time, right? They'll only renew or review us 9 months or so. So
AAA ratings get reviewed between 9 and 14 months on an average.
okay, so if they review us, will they look back at our budget session, see that we've drawn down that fund balance, and then what would that do in your opinion?
If the Oakland Press headlines and Troy plans a drawdown of 50% of their existing fund balance, it could trigger a review.
Okay, even if we, to Councilman Teet's recommendation or suggestion, if we put it towards something that would beneficially help our future, is that?
Are you saying a capital?
No, towards our retirement and pensions. I mean, do they give any consideration as to how those funds were used, and instead of just running out throwing $100 bills to, you know, everybody?
Right. You would then be paying down debt, if you will. As I talked earlier, you know, there's the debt / pensions. They look at pension as debt. Okay? And the big discussion, as many of you probably know, that municipalities in the state of Michigan that have a AA rating or better can fund their OPEB liabilities or their pension obligations if they have them. They can borrow for them. Well, the rating agencies look at that as you're trading non-required debt payments because you don't have to pay your ARC every year. You're not required to fully fund your ARC. But if you bond for it, you are required to pay that debt payment. So you're trading it for a soft cost, if you will, for a fixed cost. And they would look at that and say, okay, are they using it on a reasonable basis? If your payment is 50 grand a year, but you're gonna pay that whole thing off, they may not say it's a good thing, because what is 50 grand to the city's budget on an annual basis versus drawing all that cash over the next, 20 or 30 years that you're paying off early?
So it does matter how the money is spent.
Definitely.
Or so, just want to make sure.
I would really, I guess, encourage Brian and Tom to send you the methodology by S&P. These are the two methodologies. One is 33 pages. The other is 37 pages. I'd encourage you to read both of them, but when you get done, you're going to say, I read the same thing twice. It took me, S&Ps, it took me 3 times to read it, to fully understand it, because it is a unique change. Again, it's all quantitative. But I'd recommend that you read it, and I don't mean that to give you homework, because I'm a guest speaker, as it says, and I didn't come here to give you homework, but you can see how they can swap out things, and there's some matrices in the reports that show if you do this and do that. S&P has a website. Did I give that to you? It can only be used on an iPad or an iPhone. And I don't think you really want to use it on an iPhone.
But let's get back to the point.
But you can
because
plug
what
it
you
in.
get, Bobby, that's what this is all about. So let's get back to, if you have 50% fund balance and you're drawing it down to 30, and you use 10 million of it to put towards debt, if you will, which is unfunded accrued liabilities that you're talking about, pensions, and then you took 10 million to put into infrastructure, would that look capital? Would that look would they look down on that? Would they look poorly on that?
Depending on what the 10 million to the debt represents, is it a drop in a bucket, or is it something substantial? And
Well,
it's
it
gonna-
fully funds it.
If it fully funds it, and
As of
it
this point in time.
alleviates a drawdown on the general fund, it's a plus. Okay?
So what about capital then?
Capital, if you need it and you can't fund it by another source, it's a positive. Now, if you want to build a, Taj Mahal or something, then that's not totally needed, an ice rink.
I don't think any of us are talking about taking $10 million and spending it on anything fun. I mean, we've got serious road issues, curbs that look bad. We want to continue to have the check mark on the economic development as much as we can control, that the city looks enticing to people that are going to come into office space. I don't think anybody's sitting at this table it's talking about a fun project. There's some very serious needs to keep us turning the corner that we're turning, and we haven't spent money on. So if that is characterized as such in a review, do you get a smiley face? Or, I mean, if they understand what we don't spend on roads now is going to cost us more later, and we are watching our roads disintegrate. Long Lake is bad. It's not even a Troy road, it's a county road, but it's disintegrating. And you know what? Somebody coming in to look at office buildings on Crooks doesn't give a rip if it's a state road, a county road, or a city road. It's going to change the course of our economic development and office space filling. So do they, I don't know how detailed the conversations get, but if we characterize that properly, because if we spend money now, that saves us money later.
Right. What does it do to the general fund in terms of future years?
Okay.
Well,
Does it alleviate some pain?
That's the most important thing you could say, I think, and that's why we do 3-year budgets here, and that's why we do 5-year outlooks and projections.
That's another reason you
That's
have a
another
AAA,
thing.
because you do a 3-year budget. You don't do a 1-year budget and say, we'll worry about next year when next year gets here.
And I don't think, I can't speak for this council, but I can't see this council reducing our fund balance 50% in 1 year. Now, I think we may look at projects 3 years to 5 years and things like that, but, you know, I think we're talking about a lot of things here tonight that are really outside the scope of what we intended to talk about. And those are budgetary issues that I think at some point we're going to talk very in-depth about, but I got a good handle on this evening about what the experts think that we should be thinking about when we do have our budget discussions.
And with due respect, we could sit here all night and talk about what if.
Sure. I think, Bobby, the most important thing that you put in this thing here was the standard, what Standards and Poor's states. You know, the city's overall financial profile remains very strong in our view despite the recent declines, as characterized by very strong reserves. And putting in parentheses 51% operating expenditures on unassigned basis. So they chose to put that out there, and I think that was very, very important to them.
Because that's another form of revenue flexibility.
Right.
And again, you know, to consolidate 37 pages of their methodology in a 1-hour discussion is pretty difficult. As I said, you know, S&Ps I read 3 times. And I'm familiar with this stuff.
It took you 3 times.
It does, you know, I had to read it 3 times because I'm Polish, but and, you know, the point is that it's complex. And one thing that you do affects another. You know, does that save you money in terms of salt and preparing roads and so forth? You know, are you throwing capital, is it alleviating some capital needs by doing that? You know, coal patching and so forth. I mean, how does that affect the total budget? And to kind of say yes or no to certain things is very difficult to, you know, okay, because what you may want to do versus what he may wants to do, or maybe he wants to do.
Right.
Yeah, it's a whole package.
Pro Tem Henderson.
Just one last follow-up, and I don't want to beat the dead horse, but again, if we draw this down from 50 to 30 percent, and let's just use a round number of 10 million, and we take that and we pick the top 3 or top 5 projects in the city that we all agree on would be the appropriate way to do this, but it just simply puts a Band-Aid on 5 different programs, doesn't really fix any one of them. Is that going to be viewed less in the eyes of the...
Probably going to be viewed as a Band-Aid.
In a Band-Aid.
Because it's going to, in reality is, it's still going to hit the general fund hard. It's not going to eliminate the revenues that are needed to fund those projects or fund them in the future. It's not,
So it
it's a
would be
Band-Aid.
better to fix 1 or 2 key issues opposed to
Band-Aid it.
let's try to make everybody smile a little bit. Okay.
Well, one of the ways that the city does have to generate revenue is by passing millages. And we did that for a library. And we could do that any time that we chose to for those things. Now, if you took your fund balance and decided to throw that money towards funding the library instead of the millage, I would assume you'd be talking about the same thing that you're talking about with taking money. You're not paying down so-called debt. You're just
If you
eliminating.
decided to eliminate the levy for the millage, for the
Yes.
library,
Yes.
I don't think that would hurt you in the rating process.
Well, that's not, that's
You
what I'm saying.
have the revenue flexibility to levy for that and make that self-supporting. That would be equivalent to you saying, we're not gonna charge you for water and sewer. We're gonna pay that out of the general fund. That would be a very strong detriment, or, that would be a very bad thing to the city's rating.
And on the same hand, if we decided there was something else that was very important to the city, even though we don't have the ability to raise that millage rate, we certainly have the ability to go to the citizens and ask them if they would increase something that might be important to them too. And that wouldn't hurt you in the same regard.
Yeah, I just think this slide 5 is one of the best. It just summarizes all the criteria used to determine the bond rating. But it would be helpful to me if we could get a copy of that S&P, so I could read that 37 pages.
You have
The S&P or the Fitch, whatever.
We'll get it out to you.
Can you find that online somewhere?
We'll get it to you, we'll email it.
Okay.
Remember, Fitch, Moody's, and Standard & Poor's are very proprietary.
Yeah,
And
I understand.
they make their money from two sources, as I told you earlier.
Mhm.
One from the rating of debt, the second from subscriptions.
Yes.
There's a lot more money in subscriptions than there
I
is
bet.
debt rating. So finding it online is probably impossible unless you have a subscription.
Okay.
But I'll make sure that Brian and Tom get it. Thank you.
Bobby, just out of curiosity, who's the other county in Michigan that has AAA besides Oakland? Kent. Oh, that makes sense.
Birmingham and Bluefield Hills.
We knew that.
Okay.
I'm just not trying to play a guessing game.
Any other points of interest tonight?
Well, to give you a little story here. Most of you, I think, know your prior Director of Finance, John Lamorano. And I've known John since 1978. So John leaves here, goes to Grosse Pointe Farms. He figures out where his office is, and he calls me. Which, he was doing a rerun, as I call it, when he went back there, because he had been there before. So it didn't take him long, and he says, I want a AAA. I said, you're not kidding. Now, I live in a neighboring Grosse Pointe, which does not have a AAA, and I don't have any pride that they don't, but
Yeah.
he's like, why? So I start giving him the numbers that we talked about as they relate to the economy. And the, tax base, the value per capita, wealth income, debt to value, things like that. And he's like, are you serious? Are those numbers real? And in Bloomfield Hills, they're very high. I mean, extremely high. And they're almost 50%, or double in Bloomfield Hills than they are in Grosse Pointe Farms. Almost double. I said, you're not getting the AAA? He's like, we're getting somebody else to work for us. I still get called. The truth is the truth. And, you guys should be commended. You've maintained your AAA. You've maintained it at a time when property values have decreased. You've done a great job in administering the city. Your management team has done a wonderful job of guiding you through it. You've done a great job from a legislative standpoint of managing it through it, which is all part of the rating process. Certain things, no, you can't control. You can't control the property values. But you've stopped the bleeding, if you will, of those and handled it elsewhere. So, it's easy to say continue what you're doing because, stay the course. I mean, but, keep that in mind, and I think that what you're doing here is a smart thing. I'll be honest, this is the first time I've really sat down with a council and talked this in-depth about their rating. So you're doing all the right things. Keep up the good work, is all I can say, and you should be proud that you're AAA.
Thank you. I think we are very much. Thanks. Any other questions? Yeah, so if you want to see the video, it will be online, Brian. Okay. We are adjourned.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Nice charts.
Let's go out and spend some money.
All right.